Hey, what's up, guys? Chris here. I just want to make a quick little video about perspective and different approaches to life and what I believe is a pretty good, essentially a pretty good worldview to look at how you view yourself in relation to the world around you. So I'm gonna get right into it here, and let's hope this goes well. So basically, um, as a human being, right, you have ultimate control of yourself. Now, a lot of people hear that and it's like, yeah, I control myself, whatever. But there's been times for me, you may have experienced the same thing, where you just look in the mirror and you realize, like, that's me. I have complete control over myself. I can literally do whatever I want. I'm not necessarily gonna do anything that I think of, because not everything you think of is a good thing to do, but like, you have ultimate control over yourself. And so when you sort of look at life from that perspective of you having control, it really empowers you to do whatever you believe is the right thing to do. So something I heard from Tony Robbins, he's sort of like a motivational speaker slash life coach slash therapist, you could even say. Um, Really, I guess, famous guy. And what he has said is that the reason that you feel unhappy from a non-spiritual perspective, I'm going to keep that out of it in this video, but the reason that you feel unhappy is because you have an image in your head of what your life should be, where you should be, what should be going on, all these types of things. And if your life isn't going according to that, then it can make you unhappy because you know that you should be in a different place. And so the way to fix that situation is either one, you start living the way that you have, the way that you deeply want to and believe you can in your mind. You either do that, or you change you change the way you want to live, right? Now, that doesn't mean lower expectations of yourself or anything, but basically you either adjust how you're acting to align with what you want, or you change what you want. So very, very simple. And literally, if you break it down to its core, that's why people are unhappy. But what I really want to get into in this video is specifically about your perspective about perspective. Now, this is deep. Now, I know a lot of you guys watching might not be at a, ready for a deep level of conversation, but basically, um, something that I've found and that I think is really important for every single person is to try to be the best the best you can possibly be at responding to situations and having the most amount of control that you possibly can over yourself. I'm not talking about controlling other people. Um, and by that, I mean there may be situations where somebody around you is arguing and yelling. And right now, maybe you hear somebody else arguing and it sort of messes with your mood for the day. Now, I've been at a point where that's happened, where you hear somebody arguing, messes with your mood, hear somebody yelling, you see something bad happen, and it affects your mood for the rest of the day. Now, what you're doing there is you're reacting. You're reacting to what happens. You're not choosing how you want to react. You're just reacting. You're just going with the flow. Now, what I think is important is when you're able to be in a situation like that. So now, let's say, for example, someone is yelling. I'll give an example. Today at school, I go downstairs to the forum right in front of the caf to eat my lunch, and there's some girls yelling and screaming at some guy, and all these people are around recording and laughing. The first thing I thought was like, why you guys like recording and laughing at this stuff? It's just like, I don't know, it's just like beyond me. why people do certain things. There's certain things people do where it's like, it's so beyond me that it's not even a thing that I can comprehend or question because it's just so far away. It's just like such a low level of frequency, and that's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just true. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. If you're operating on sort of a higher level frequency than people who are just going around like gossiping and stuff like that, like you don't relate to that at all whatsoever, to the point where it's like you don't even consider it in your brain. You don't even consider considering it. It's just like out of the question. But back to what I'm saying. Um, if so, let's say in the past I go down and hear somebody yelling, and I go, "Oh my gosh, why are these people yelling? It's so annoying. Oh my god!" And then I just start reacting like that, and it tampers with my mood the rest of the day. I don't think that's a great example for a situation because in the past I wouldn't really do that. But you know what I mean. Maybe you get home, your parents are arguing, your siblings are arguing, or whatever, and it messes with your mood. If you can get to a place where you have the control over yourself to be in that situation and stay calm, or maybe you're in an argument, maybe someone is blowing something that you said or did completely out of proportion, and usually you would blow like right back at them, and you would, start yelling and arguing back and start blaming them for the situation or whatever. Usually you would do that. But when you can get to a place where you remove your ego from the situation, and even if you're wrong, wait, yeah, even if you're right, sorry, even if you're right, you can remove your ego from the situation and stop trying to be right and be able to stay calm and allow yourself to get through the situation and not be affected by it. Now, I know there's people in all different kinds of situations with things going on that are more complicated than that, but for me, I've found that, like, I've got to a place where people could be yelling and arguing around me, and I'm just there and I just go, okay, and it's just like you laugh at it, and it's so, I don't know, it's kind of freeing, to be honest. And that's about it. That's basically what I wanted to get at in this video. It's already like 8 minutes, but it's essentially, you know, having control over yourself, being able to remove your ego out of situations, being able to be as honest as you can, even though you don't like it. Because here's the thing. Let's take your family, for example, right? Let's say you have like family issues and you're trying to get them solved. Part of the problem is you. Part of the problem is each individual person in your house, right? Everybody is part of the problem. And when big problems arise is when one person or more than one person fails to admit that they are part of the problem. That's when you start seeing real problems. When someone is afraid to admit, or they're not willing to admit because they're trying to protect their ego and their self-image, right? That's when it's a problem. And so when you're able to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I am part of this problem, whatever, you're arguing with someone and they're getting really mad at you, instead of going back and and pushing that trigger to make them really, really mad at you, instead of doing that, you stay calm and you be reasonable and you are honest with them and you say, like, listen, yes, I'm guilty of this, but at the same time, you're guilty of this, and you're reasonable and honest, then it's also that person's responsibility to do the same thing. Because when you do that, it removes all the emotional tension from like bad negative situations. When you're able to just look at things reasonably and logically and break things down at that level, it solves problems. And the thing is, when those problems don't get solved, it's usually because one person or more than one person is not willing to do that. And that's why you see, a lot of these really stupid arguments and yelling fights and triggered people in the streets, in viral videos, whether it have to do with politics or relationships and all this stuff. It's because people don't know themselves, and they don't know how to remove their ego from a situation, and they don't know how to think logically about a situation and just break it down and put it into perspective, because they're so consumed in whatever emotion is tying them up at the time. And it's not a good thing to do, because then you're just run by your emotions. And if you're run by your emotions change all the time, and you're just going to be all over the place. Someone makes you mad, you just, ugh. Someone makes you sad, you're just crying. Like, no, be able to control it. So basically, that's what I want to say. The big part is about being honest, and I genuinely think that if everybody was to look at it from that perspective, there'd be so much less problems in the world. And I see it in my own family. I see the I see examples of people who own up to their own faults and look at things logically, and I see the other side where people are just run by emotions. I see that in you can see that in every single family. You can see that in every family, every friend group, everywhere. And usually people who get emotionally triggered by things, they are deeply insecure or deeply traumatized by something that relates. So let's say you say something and it pushes that button. That the reason that that button exists and the reason why that triggers them is because it's related to a deep insecurity or like a childhood trauma, childhood experience. And if that person's not aware of that, they're just gonna keep falling into that trap of getting angry, getting triggered, not being able to handle it because they're not aware of what the stem of the problem is. And that's why I say be able to remove your ego from the situation and put things into perspective and look at the root cause of the problem, in yourself, and then you're able to solve the problems. So I wish I could go into it in more depth, more specifically. This video has sort of been all over the place, but this is sort of just a quick 12-minute gist of this whole perspective thing about control and being logical and reasonable and all this stuff. And I think it's really important, and I think we're falling away from it a lot today, especially with this whole trigger culture. It's not as many people as it seems that just automatically get triggered, but there's way too many people that just get triggered so easily, and it's because they are deeply emotional, deeply insecure about certain things, and they're not willing to admit it. They're trying to protect their ego, and they're afraid to be honest with themselves because there's a lot of things that they've been holding back, and to be vulnerable and reveal that is really scary, especially when you've been holding it back for a long time. And so that's that. That's all I'm going to get into today. So I hope you got something from this. Hope you learned something and actually apply it. Think about it, apply it, don't overthink it. Just think about it a little bit, have some fun, relax. You're alive, you have control of your life. There's obviously things that happen that are out of your control, but guess what? Can you control it? No? Then why worry about it? Can you control it? Yes? Then why worry about it? There you go.